Hello, everybody, and welcome back. So, a pretty common sentiment that I see whenever I talk about playing faster or farming XP is that you're only going to play X amount of missions, or I'm just sitting down to do this or do that. So, realistically, me saving a couple minutes isn't going to get me through any more missions than I would if I just played for this amount of time, which I think on a fundamental level is a pretty fair sentiment. I don't think it's really wrong, but I'm kind of convinced that some people might have that a little bit, a little bit over assuming on how much time you could actually save from playing faster the way that I do. So I thought the most organic way to go about this, even if it doesn't change anyone's mind, is just kind of loading into the game and talking about what I would look at and what I would do in order to get into that speed play groove. What are some good habits to get into, things to do, things to look for, and what you can kind of do to level faster and maybe squeeze in that one more mission a day. So, I mean, there's a lot of things to talk about, like KPI, which obviously I'm not really an expert on anymore, as I've already moved through this progression path. So a lot of things like unlocking overclocks and things like that, I'm not going to have a good bit of insight for you on and how it fits into speed play. But once you get into the groove and you have your build set up, that's the kind of groove that we're going to be talking about today. So to say that I just hopped on Deep Rock, the first couple things I would look at is, okay, what are my character levels at? What's a good goal for today? If you have an extremely long play session, doing one full promotion on one class is always a good idea, especially if you have a low level one that you can run it all the way up to 25. I don't know if any other people can really play this way, but for me, I personally can just sit down and play one class all the way from 1 to 25 until the game makes me stop by being capped on XP, or sometimes I'm just maybe getting on for a little bit, or I'm not really feeling it right now, so I might want to go for something like my driller right here and be like, okay, well, I can get driller to 25, and maybe if I'm not really feeling it, or I'm not in a good groove, or I'm having some bad missions, I'm just not having a good time, I can hop off once I get him to 25. So for the purpose of this video, I'll probably just play driller to 25. Looking at builds and everything is kind of mission dependent. My old reliable here, just cryo driller. This is just a feel good build that works pretty good on every mission type, so always a safe bet to take out if you don't know what mission you're going to be playing. If you're just getting on for the day, a good thing to look at is the mineral trade terminal. If it's a sell deal, if it wants you to sell minerals, just go ahead and do it. It's almost always beneficial, even if it's your lowest mineral. So I barely had any of Magnite or Bismore, for example, and it asked me to sell. It's still generally a good idea, and just focus on playing missions more in that biome. Performance pass stuff, there's really not much to talk about here as far as like actual tangible gameplay stuff goes. Like, maybe if you're hurting for minerals, you can see if you've got some, but realistically, I mean, as long as you claim this stuff before the season ends, there's no reason to open this terminal before the end of the season. So something that a mod called Rancor's Rig HUD helps me out with a lot is picking a mission. If you're playing for speed, XP, and just grinding in general, really you should only be playing missions that have mutators on them. Thankfully, Rancor's Rig HUD shows you all the missions that have mutators, positive, negative, or both, on the side of your screen. So this makes it much easier than having to go like, okay, I don't really want to play Lithophage. That's just a normal refinery with Gung Seeds. I'm not going to play that. That's an okay mission. I might go with that. Golden Bug is a waste of my time. Double Warning is pretty fun. Crit Weakness Dreads isn't that great. Oh, a double XP. I'll play this double XP. For me, whenever I load into the space rig, before I even exit this door right here, I can see, oh look, Kirby's Hospital, double XP in the salt pits, bang, we're going. It's just that easy. So another big thing when it comes to speed play that I've talked about in the past is whether you run solo, public lobby, or with a group of friends. One thing I'd strongly advocate for if you're going to run a public lobby, which I think speed play in public works perfectly fine, with one caveat. You definitely want to do two things. Go in your options menu here and give yourself something to show people what your lobby is about. I don't think this is an option on consoles, or at least one of the consoles, so apologies if that's not applicable to you. And if you're on PC on Steam, you can get a mod that I consider very useful, Message of the Day and Stat Track. Stat Track less important, but message of the day is quite useful. So this will greet the user when they join. It'll show you their rank, which is pretty useful because you can't actually see that in a mission normally. This mod is the only way to do it, which, you know, personally, doesn't really bother me, but if you're already struggling to get good times on Has 5 and you don't feel like carrying that level 5, then, you know, having that information might allow you to make a more informed decision. And also, you can see their ping if you set this. That way you can just know if they're getting bodied, if they have a reason or not. And you can feel bad for them appropriately. And then just kind of leave some general information for people to kind of get ahead of the complaints that you're preemptively going to get. Because the amount of times that people will be like, wait, I want to play Flappy Boot, or I want to get this Dark Morkite for this Industrial Sabotage we're about to play. A lot of that gets subverted whenever I'm like, bro, you read this whenever you join the game. You have 15 seconds before the next mission starts, more or less. And then any picky stuff you have, I'm beyond the point of caring whether it's justified to tell people how to play the game or not. If you're there in your game, you have a right to request at least some basic information about how the game is played. If you don't like me saying that, or you don't like playing in games that have any amount of stipulations at all, then the easy answer is host your own game. And also leave me a nice comment on this video full of slurs. But yeah, as you can see, anytime someone joins the game, it'll post that message right there to them. Another extremely useful mod is combined resources, and I'll show you a little bit more of that once we get into the mission. But without further ado, I'm just going to get my buddy in here, since we were just hanging out and playing, and that's what made me decide to record today. You dastardly Brian.
Whoa.
Mission starting. We're going to Kirby's Hospital. So since I haven't really in the past, I'll just talk a little bit at length about kind of the thought process when you're just playing Speedplay missions. And one of the great things about it, and the reason that I claim this playstyle so closely to myself, is because there's really no failure to be had here. There's no, like, wrong things to do, only suboptimal decisions. I know everyone winces at that word, as you've heard it from every loser on the internet, and all the PDRG dwellers, but really, there's nothing wrong to do. It's just having the hindsight and the self-awareness to be like, okay, I shouldn't have done that. Like, that was a little bit slower. Maybe I should have done this first. That would have got us to the drop pod faster. Like, it's just a lot of little decision-making that gets shaped over time. So right now, I'm running over that mule to go and trip the spawns, because I'm pretty comfortable taking on the cave spawns as well as at least one mule worth of bugs at once. I'm going to start pulling some legs. I'm not going to be able to repair this right now, just because I don't have, well, I guess I'll have his gunner shield in a second, but more or less right now, this isn't necessarily about getting this mule repaired, it's just about getting the bugs started spawning. So that mule is basically done now. All that needs to be done to fix it is just somebody hold the interact button on it. So it's all about multitasking. I know there's bugs all around me right now, so I'm kind of just making little fast movements, seeing what little stuff I can do. Tanking damage is a pretty important thing, and actually, like, using that tanking to speed up what you're doing. So I knew I was going to take at least a little bit of damage there. I'm not trying to, you know, go hitless or anything right now, so I'm accepting the damage, kind of, and using the time that I'm saving from not stopping to fight everything before going back to work to my advantage. I don't know. Oh, it's up there. This is pretty nasty terrain for what I'm trying to do right here. Ideally, you'll have a pretty nice little area to move around in and control the enemies and control how much damage you're taking, but I'm in a pretty gross little location. So I'm kind of multitasking when it comes to... Oh, that's... multitasking a little bit in the sense that I'm fighting, quote-unquote, the enemies behind me while I'm clearing out the ambient threats. So I know these guys are still behind me. With something like Cryo Cannon and Cold Radiance, there's basically never a losing situation you can get into when it comes to just kiting normal bugs, considering I just sit here and hold left click and be more or less invincible, to melee enemies at least. So now I gotta pay my dues and actually clean up these enemies a little bit. So now I'm gonna go back over here. Need one more. I see it right there. I'm just gonna have a hard time getting that. Yeah, anytime you're aiming to play fast, especially on a mission with a lot of mixed objectives like egg hunt or salvage in the mule phase, you really gotta use your shield to your advantage, your body shield, to actually soak up damage. Oh, I didn't need this, I'm done. Talking too much. See, this is what happens. You gotta focus on the game. Using your actual, like, player shield a good amount to soak up damage, because if it's full, it's not doing anything for you. It should be basically, you should be losing it and regenning it all the time. In a perfect world, you would take 0 health damage and just constantly buffer damage with your shield and use that to get a couple extra hits on a mule or pick up a leg or just things like that in salvage. There's plenty of examples of that, everything from mining Morkite, mining Nitra, and then the salvage specific examples I just gave. It's all little things you can do to be a little bit faster. Like if I stop to wipe out every Plague Heart. If I stop to wipe out every bug in the map anytime they spawn, these missions are going to take forever. And that's why normal missions do take forever, is because people they have to switch back and forth from combat mode to objective mode. Doing both at the same time is the #1 like skill up you can get for moving faster in missions. Oh my god, it wasn't the last one. So how many, what shield was that for you? Was that, like, how many do you have left?
That was shield 1, so I have 3 left.
Yeah, so things like that is a good example where we're about to be at a place where we're just going to be standing next to a resupply for the rest of the mission. So I wouldn't say wasteful to not use them, but it's an easy little free advantage we can gain by just burning shields there instead of waiting. I don't have anything on me. Also, combined resources, to talk about that a little bit, you can see at the bottom of the screen what the entire team all together is carrying. So you can see he has 45 Nitra, 7 blooms, 9 Bismore, 5 gold, 1 barley bulb. The important thing there is that I know he has the rest of the blooms. So even if this was a public game and we weren't communicating at all, like, I don't have to ask how many blooms he has. I literally know for a fact that in some combination my team has the rest of the secondaries. Because not looking at combined resources right now, you might look at this and be like, oh, we're skipping the secondary. We only have 8 out of 15. But then with that extra knowledge, you can be like, oh, okay, it's done. So you save that time of having to calm that. You save the time of hesitating on the black box. It just cleans up the communications a lot, and also makes you able to have more information in even an environment with no communication. Another thing you might have seen there is I didn't necessarily wait for him to get here to start the box. That's one of the things that will be a real, like, tough pill to swallow for pub players that you'll have to expect pushback on, is that if you don't do everything and ready check and do all this stuff and wait for them to be standing right next to you, you're gonna get some people that are just like, what the hell, why would you do that? Like, you start an omen while they're resupplying and they lose their damn minds. Like, it's kind of stuff like that you gotta be prepared for. And it's one of the reasons why you should give people a heads up going in, so hopefully you don't get that pushback whenever the time comes. Salvage is a pretty benign mission when it comes to speed play. I was focusing pretty heavily on the stuff you can do to speed up the mules, because that's really all that you can do to speed up salvage. I mean, the uplinks are pretty much, they take how much time they take. That's really all there is to it. If you have multiple people in the game, it's important to make sure everyone's in the zone so they're going at max speed. Unless you, like, really want to sweat, and, like, if you have gunk seeds and salvage, you could theoretically have your scout out and about putting the gunk seeds in while the rest of you are doing the uplink. That would, in theory, be a time save as long as they don't die, but unless you know better, and you know who you are, if you know better and you know the situations you can be in, you should pretty much just have everyone in the zone at all times, except like I did right at the beginning there, except right when you're starting it up. If someone else is cleaning something up, then it's okay to be by yourself, but basically if the zone's running, you're gonna be here forever if not everyone's in it. So something I have a pretty hard time articulating in a meaningful way is how thorough you should be, and versus how much you should skip and how quickly you should go. Because if you take something like salvage, for example, there's going to be a tunnel around the side of the map. So you can see that tunnel entrance right there that neither of us went into. Mainly because we saw all the mules out here. Mules are very, very rarely in those side tunnels. We knew what we were doing. We had the mules, we had the blooms, and we got a good amount of stuff, you know? We got pearls, we got all this stuff, we got a mini meteor. So neither of us really felt inclined to come in here. And I'm purely coming in here for an example. I wouldn't personally have come in here at any point unless I was playing Scout or something. Like right now, I would have come here. But the thing is there could be a cube in here, there could be a gold chunk in here, there could be a bitter gem in here, but you have to think about the overall the square footage of the cave. If you look at the cave, there's a lot of cave out there, and this side tunnel really isn't much. So it's not that much of the total space of the cave. Once you know more like intuitive information about cave generation that you just learn by playing, you'll start to understand like where valuable things like machine events and crates and stuff can spawn and the area that they're visible from. So with that basic knowledge base, I was able to look at that side tunnel and say, hey, there's probably nothing valuable in there. And sometimes you will be wrong, and sometimes you may miss a cube or miss a bitter gem because it was in that tunnel and you just didn't look. But the time that you'll save by not looking in those tunnels massively outweighs the potential reward. So I might miss 1 cube every 100 salvage side tunnels that I skip. But the thing is, in the 2-3 minutes that I save personally by not running down those tunnels ever, I get to play another 10, 15, 20 salvage missions in the time that it would have taken me to play 100 and find that extra cube. That's making a lot of statistical assumptions, and that's really not based in fact or anything, but the fundamental concept is that there's nothing so valuable in any one cave that it's not worth missing to keep up those good practices. So skipping 100 salvage tunnels is a much better reward than the 1 machine event, 1 cube, things like that you might find in one of those salvage side tunnels you actually go to. And this is a great example right here of why spending that extra minute would have been costly for me. Is if we'd have arrived to the space rig a minute and 5 seconds later, I wouldn't be able to grab this mission again. And if we were just playing to grind and gain XP and level up, I would grab this mission and play it again. For the sake of variety in the video, I'm going to wait till the mission resets and get a different one and look at a new set of missions, just because I already explained my thought process with these missions. But moving beyond that, that minute that we saved by making maybe we missed something, maybe we go a little bit faster, we shield for that mini mule instead of killing all the enemies first. It's those little 10, 15, 20 second decisions that everybody makes that gets you to play a double XP mission again. Because for all we know, the next rotation of missions isn't going to have a double XP in it, or a mineral mania, or anything quote unquote worth playing. So then we default back on playing an assignment mission or something, but the point being, we got another double XP mission out of thin air because we played faster. So looking at the new set of missions though, we do actually get another double XP, which is good. We can look at point extraction in a double XP sense, and we also got a really nice 4-egg rich atmosphere. 4-egg and rich atmosphere really isn't that good, or excuse me, not rich atmosphere, that has nothing to do with it. Eggs really isn't that good for XP. It is solid for minerals though, just because you have open access to basically the entire cave, so you can very quickly gather up everything, pull the eggs, and get out. We're gonna play the double XP point extraction, just because point extractions are just the home of speed gaming. So we have a pretty good example here of how many times you can rerun a double XP. So we just hit the 30-minute mark and grab this mission. So I think we'll probably play through it as many times as we can to try to show an example of just how many times you can re-grab the same mission by shaving those minutes. For example, if this run takes us 10 minutes, then we do it again, it takes us 10 minutes. We do it a third time, it takes us another 10 minutes. That's all we get. We've done it 3 times, 30 minutes has passed, and now we're out of time to re-grab it. So, for example, if you're really hustling and you can get it done in 5 minutes, then you can do it up to 6 times, which is pretty heinous for double XP and just how much you can wring out of it. Like, you can easily get upwards of 100,000, 150,000 XP if you get lucky with random stuff like cubes, for example. So this is another great example. I can't even keep up with everything that's showing up. Is there can only be 1 cube per mission. It's a 1 in 26 chance per cave to be there. So if we find a cube now, I don't have to think about, oh, maybe there's a cube right around that corner for the rest of this particular mission. So that's not a concern that I have to have. So that frees up my mind a little bit and lets me play even faster because I know there's less and less places I need to look for valuable stuff and less valuable stuff left to find, potentially. So with that cube in hand, now we know that, okay, well, we can play through this mission a little bit faster, but also it was a benefit for us to play more missions, because obviously if you don't find a cube in the mission and you spent 30 minutes looking for it versus I barely looked for it, didn't find it, and it only took me 10 minutes, I get to look at 3 missions in the time that you get to look at 1. So I get to look for 3 cubes where you're looking for 1, theoretically. I don't mean that to be so insulting, but if you, with the example of you, nebulous you, playing slower, going for less stuff, then I get to look at more cave, find more valuable things. Sometimes I'll miss something, sure, and maybe I have to scramble to get something into the pod, but in general, it's just better to see more caves, more individual missions. So something you'll notice here is I'm nixed all this holomite. I can look at the bottom of my HUD. I can see that we have 37 holomite in pockets right now. So for the rest of this mission, I'm going to be skipping holomite. There's no real benefit to getting it. It's a small little amount of XP. Maybe I grab it if we have nothing else to do while we're waiting for the pod. But in general, holomite is now useless to me for the rest of this mission. This is a good example right here of why cryo cannon is a really good choice for vanilla speedrunning, rather than having to deal with all those enemies. I just froze them, delayed them, and got back to work. So I will have to deal with them in a minute, but the point being, I'm still progressing the mission right now. I'm getting closer to us pushing the button, rather than still being over there dealing with those bugs with something like flamethrower or sludge. So I'm gonna do the similar thing here, freeze everything up, get this up here. Main thing I'm gunning for is getting everything close to the mine head, because the mine head is doing damage on its own. So everything that gets closer to the mine head, we get more of that free damage from the mine head turrets. Don't know what happened there. Good example of taking damage. I knew I was going to get hit there, just had to cope with it just to get everything picked up. Starting to struggle to find more quarks. I know there's one down this pit. Just kind of running laps, keeping the enemies in tow, looking for valuables. This one's going to be tricky, as I'm going to have to dig a tunnel. If you're jumping upwards with Driller as well, you can actually outrun pretty much every bug. Swarmers can kind of jump up on you and get a piece of you, but in general, you can outrun bugs vertically if you jump like that while you're drilling. Makes really nasty, hard to traverse tunnels for your teammates, so don't do that if it's something you're expecting everyone to go through, or you're not getting chased, but it is the fastest way to move upwards as Driller, to make like really nasty, jagged upward tunnels like that. Bulk is going to make this a little bit more challenging. I'm going to wrap back around down here, grab up the quark that I dug out, get it up the tunnel. Can you shield the mine head in a second?
Yep. Oh! Ooh, got pushed in the corner.
You don't have iron will?
I do.
I would just use it. There's sugar right over here. Just a little bit.
Ooh.
Noble sacrifice.
Got it off.
We lose the pool float, it's fine.
Yeah.
So that was pretty messy in general, although it is, you know, a suboptimal but great example of just doing what you gotta do to get the mission moving. Because once we had that Aquark right there by the minehead, we were just basically bleeding time for no reason, and he burned a lot of resources and put himself in a bad situation. But at the end of it, the mission is now, like, progressing. Like, right now, we can progress the mission at 1 second per second. There's nothing left we can do to make the mission move faster. So, we're kind of struggling because of it, but when it comes to clearing the mission faster, it should produce, like, a pretty much identical result. We'll just deposit on the drop pod. That's something I advocate for quite a bit. This is a pretty nasty spot for it, but I can get the pool float there, I can get the holomite there. Won't be that much of an issue. And at the end of the day, it is going to get us to the end of the mission faster, because he can get in the doors and I can die for the deposit. It's fine. Right now I'm just trying to wring out the last little bit of damage that we can from the minehead turrets to save our own ammo. You can gamble and, like, go out to a certain location and hope the pod will land on you, because point extraction is kind of weird with that. But generally, what I do is just sit in the middle, where I can go any direction quickly. And generally I can get there about as fast as the pod will land anyways. Maybe like 10 or 15 seconds behind it, but usually not too much of an issue. Oh good, a meteor. Fragments, nothing lost.
It's a gold chunk there.
Got it. So this is a great example right here, is you can usually salvage things that you might have missed the first time around. So just paying attention, good cons, you can usually recover. So even if we'd have found that cube right there, we still get it in, we still get the mission done. I think I forgot to deposit holomite. Whoops. Oh no, I did. So a pretty solid 24k in 8 minutes. Obviously we took a little bit of extra time because the map was suboptimal. We're not playing an incredible class combo for speed. It's solid, but you know, we could do better theoretically. So now we're gonna re-grab that same mission and do it again. Where was that? REZ. So we're 10 minutes into the reset now, and we're gonna run it again. So we're running a little bit behind ideal speed play for 2 players. I'd say about 7-8 minutes is the best you can hope for on average. The 5-minute figure is 4 people, like, really moving on point extraction. Some missions scale pretty much linearly in time with... no. Some missions are pretty flat in the amount of players changing up or down the amount of time it takes to clear. So like Dreads, for example, it'll probably take about the same amount of time with 1, 2, or 4 players. It really isn't a huge difference because the Dreads are so weak with 1 player versus you do so much damage with 4 players that it pretty much balances out. Things like point extraction though, like if you need 10 gems and you only have 2 people carrying them versus 4 people carrying them, there's a pretty gross time difference to be had there. So we'll see if we can go a little bit faster on this one. I'm not sure though. There's been a lot of bugs, so I don't know if Scout's gonna be enough to clear and cleave. Scout is an even better example of what I'm talking about though, with just kind of leaving enemies behind and working the mission. It's not about deferring the enemies onto your teammates necessarily, it's more about just getting them off of yourself while you're doing productive things. Okay, I'm gonna die for that. Wow, that was really painful. Yikes. Okay, well that's nasty. It's a really bad pit right in between where all the Aquarks are and where I'm and where the minehead is, so it's gonna be interesting to cope with that, but just kind of one of the things you gotta prepare for is bad terrain and bad class lineup with that terrain. Got me really regretting not picking NG right now with all these pits that I'm just dropping all of them into. I think I can get this out in time. Okay, that works. Gonna have to peel off of this one or I'm gonna die for it. Usually I don't like to, if I'm gonna burn Iron Will for objective stuff, I don't like to do it that early. But when it comes to speed stuff, if you're confident that it was just, you know, a little one-off, then you can generally just burn an Iron Will to catch back up, because getting him off of what he was doing there, back on to help me out, to revive me, and that would slow me down, slow his a Quark down. It's just not worth it. You. I overshot it.
Nice.
Gotta redeem myself. So something I've done a lot of thinking on is whether or not gold chunks are really worth it. I've decided that I'm just gonna get them. Like it's different enough from just whole right click on vein of gold that it's actually interesting. It's an interesting challenge for me to juggle a gem instead of, you know, holding right click to get gold. So the numerical information on it is significantly better than, you know, mining it like 4 or 5 veins of gold to get 150 to 250 gold. But even at that, it's still mainly credits, not so much XP, so it's not quite as good of a thing to be doing as just stripping a Quarks and maybe getting it in the pod. But for me, you know, like I said, Speedplay has a lot of choices about what you find valuable. So even if you don't necessarily want to go for XP or credits or minerals or anything like that, and you're just picking normal missions and you just want to try harder, play them faster, then it's still, you know, it's still speed play. It's just kind of about like what you want to go for and what you're trying to get out of the missions. So for me, even though, you know, it doesn't really line up with minerals or XP, I still care about gold chunks. Just because it's an objective. It's a random event. I got the last one.
Yep.
I hear them coming from me. Yikes. Real nasty. A lot of rough cave gen in this one, but we got through it. Oh, you had one, didn't you?
Yep.
Oh. So something I wouldn't necessarily recommend when it comes to pushing pub games into faster speed play stuff is skipping Nitra. And when I say skipping Nitra, I don't mean always not resupplying like we did here. On escort, you'll obviously want like 2 on long escorts, maybe only 1 on short and 2 on, excuse me, 3 on long escorts, 2 on short escorts. You know, it varies quite a bit, mission to mission. Like, if you really want to like go quick, you can rip and dip 4 eggs and just not have any Nitra at all, or do point extractions like we just did, where get no Nitra at all, just 0 in the bank. Because really, at the end of the day, it depends on team comp. So if you have like RJNG with a lot of ammo left, you don't need Nitra. They can get away until the pod gets here, as long as you get to this point with decent resources. So like right now, Scout is the real exception to the rule. Like there's nothing that can stop us at this point other than me being stupid. Like we will get out of this mission even if he has to die and I get out by myself. Like there's no risk. I can just run in circles and grapple away from bugs until the mission ends. Like it's over, basically. So the Nitra thing is a lot less of a factor, so even if we had a couple of quirks left, we could still get to the end without anything bad happening, since I can just run around. That's a largely scout in the team comp exclusive luxury, though. A lot of other times you may need to consider getting a resupply. Like, any class can kite until the pod shows up. It'll just be a lot more uncomfortable. More meteors, cool. Also, something I guess I should put on the record is, yeah, if you don't have anything else to do, there's no, like, heavy objects to be carrying around, you're just waiting on the pod, yeah, just mine gold. Like, it's literally better than doing nothing. Like, you might as well. Oops.
Oh.
Another example of choices that I make that aren't quote-unquote optimal on paper is, like, in that situation, the best use of our time, quote-unquote, could have saved like 10 seconds, would just be for him to die. Like, if he just died by the mine head before the pod even showed up and I was ready to dive in, that would have been the fastest way for us to leave. But at the same time, you know, it's a quintessential part of the game, is like trying to cross that zip line while there's a web spitter shooting at you. So, and once again, don't decay your enjoyment of the loop just for extra 5 seconds.
And I had Iron Will.
Yeah, that too. Like, that is a good example of situational thinking. Is if I'd have told him, hey, die so we can go faster, you might have been like, I have Iron Will, it's not even gonna save time. So, yeah, in retrospect, I wasn't paying that close of attention, but that might have been the time efficient decision anyways. Like, who knows? So now he's got assignment missions, so we'll be weaving these in whenever there's not a good mission to be playing instead. So we're right at 20 minutes of the reset right now, starting our third one. So we're pretty much right on time with what I would consider the lowest good grinding rate of point extraction. Especially 10 a quark will always run a little longer, and like I said, less players, it will make it take longer. But I think if you're not getting 3 or 4 runs out of the same point extraction, unless there's some grave, life-changing event happening during it, like machine events, core locks, things like that, unless that stuff is happening, you should be getting 3 or 4 rotations out of pretty much any point extraction in a reset. So this is going to be quite a mess here. I've got the bugs right on top of me. I'm going to be just running around, doing little chips at everything here. Since this is the last one of the reset, I'm probably going to end up skipping quite a bit of extra stuff. I want to get us back in time to grab the mission again, so I'm going to make some sacrifices as far as the extra stuff that we get. Tethered those guys down. Another thing for more, like, you need to cut time things, is skipping secondaries until the pod is actually on the way. That's good practice basically all the time, especially with something as easy as Holomite. I personally don't usually do it just because it feels kind of weird, but that is a good, like, time-saving decision. Obviously, you can't do that with things like Gunk Seeds, but realistically, like, I wouldn't be playing Gunk Seed missions at all for speed. If you do end up having to play a Gunk Seed mission, just either know that you're not going to get the secondary or accept that it's going to cost you like 4 or 5 minutes. Okay, I'm not going to use my grapple on the way down, take some damage, and that way I can use it to get out with the gem. That's where we're starting to get into, like, really small decisions that you can make to save some time. So, like, realistically, that saved me at most 3 seconds, because of, you know, that's just how long a grappling hook recharge is. But I had some shield, I had the health to burn, so, you know, why not? That one's going to be gross to get. Take a lot of fall damage here. I'm gonna cryo myself to give myself time to get this. That one in the ceiling right there is going to be nearly impossible without a resupply.
Damn. munched me.
This is a good example of just, things happen. We're not gonna abort the mission because someone died. It's not about getting good times, it's about reacting to, well, everything that we do is about getting good times, in the sense that making good decisions is in support of getting better times. So the good decision there is to do whatever I have to do to get him up, because he's 50% or more of the progression of the mission. So I need, we're progressing half as quickly while he's dead. So me burning some extra resources is worth getting him up as fast as I can. Sometimes in like really bad situations in vanilla game, it's worth just to strafe around and not burn iron wills or anything to get people up. But in this situation, it's just we just get everyone back. These septic spreaders are making this actually impossible.
Oh.
How many was that? 4?
Yeah, that was insane.
Oh, you nuked that one out of the ceiling. Nice.
Yeah.
Forgot you had that. So I'm gonna play a little bit riskier here for a second, just because I have an iron will to burn at some point. Don't need it. So probably just throw it away to get him up here. Radioactive Praetorian missed me, so we're good. Okay. A little bit slower than the last one, but also had some pretty rough terrain stuff going on, and death. So we get through it. It'll be enough time to make it back to re-grab the mission. The main thing is looking at that 30-minute interval for the mission reset and saying, okay, how many can I get right now? Like, so when you're looking at that from the outset with 30 minutes remaining, you'd be like, okay, I can get like 5 or 6 of these if these go well. And then, a couple of them don't go super well, and you're like, okay, well, maybe we can get 4, maybe we can get 5, okay, now we can get 3, maybe 4. And, you kind of, it's still, once again, like, it all kind of comes out the same way, so there's no, like, oh, I didn't get 6 missions, we failed. It's, we're gonna try to get 6, if we only get 3, cool, we still, we made good decisions, and we tried to do better, and if we made mistakes, we're learning from them, things like that. Because, don't get me wrong, like, a new player that wants to get into Speedplay, like, you're not going to be able to boot up with a 4-player team of either randoms or a pre-made and be able to do 6-point extractions in 30 minutes. It's just, you need time. Like, I can teach you a decent amount of little stuff, little tech, but at the end of the day, like, there's nothing I can do for just raw, like, being in the muck and experiencing things. That you just have to do that for yourself. I wish I could play your first 150 Speedplay missions for you and learn all the hard lessons for you, but just doesn't work that way. Look at this poor little guy. And we got more than enough Holomite to finish the mission, so now we're just kind of chilling out. Right here you can see I'm gambling on this location, mainly because the pearl was already here. Look at that. So there's a few different locations you'll learn as you play more and more point extractions that the pod tends to spawn. So you learn where those are, and you kind of like lean towards one, and you're like, okay, well, no, it's going to be over there. It's always best to be uphill, because you can very quickly move yourself and heavy objects downwards towards where the pod actually is. So, for example here, the pearl was up here, I was up here. It's just a no-brainer choice to say, okay, we're gonna stay here. We're gonna gamble on here. So we might just barely make it in time to re-grab the mission. Eating a lot of time on loading screens because we have a lot of physical distance, but just something to consider. Something to keep in mind. Okay, nope, we missed. So there you go. That's a pretty good example of why you should make those split-second better decisions, because we were 11 seconds slow to get that double XP point extraction again. If we'd have made it with 1 second left, I could have popped in here, REZ, grabbed it, and we could have done it. Thankfully, we got 2 more double XP missions in front of us now, so, you know, not that painful, but, you know, the more you do, the better. It feels better to say, oh, I landed that same mission 5 times, 6 times. I've got 8 once, and we had to skip secondaries for it. That was pretty brutal, but 8 double XP point extractions in a row is a lot of XP for the leveling process in such a short amount of time. So, not to say that that's the only thing that matters. It's not. But it feels good. It looks good to flex that skill and see how fast and far you can go. So now we're gonna pick a suboptimal one. If I was just playing with a team of randoms, I would probably pick the triple dreads or the 4 eggs double XP instead of this mission right here. But you know, playing with the boys, we're grinding levels and assignments because he's capped on gunner right now, so we need to do his assignment at some point, because as you can see, he's about to cap on energy as well. So, you know, if we cap 2 of his classes at once, this is where it starts to get a little bit restrictive. And if we play a mission where he wants to play gunner or NG just to make a better comp for us, then we're not able to. So it's good when especially when you're playing with people you know, to balance assignments with double XPs and mineral manias and just normal gameplay, because eventually people will cap out and get soft locked if you just don't play their assignments ever. Also, most pub players will get bored playing point extraction 8 times in a row, so shake it up a little bit. Alright, this one's yours. You're commentating this one. You commentate on our decision making and what we're doing. Yeah.
Well, to start, oh, the scout's gonna go and grab an egg while I just kind of mosey around the spawn.
Nobody tell him he's so right, and I was getting Nitra for no reason. Yep, that's a good decision to make with dreads, because if you want to fight him in spawn, which is generally a pretty good decision, because a lot of dread caves can be extremely nasty, you just need to get them right away. There's some, like, wall banging stuff you can do with NG platforms, but generally the way you'll go about that is just launching a scout out to go find an egg and pop it. I'm gonna do a little, like, cursory run around this room, try to grab the, like, extended stuff that I can. Because it's a 50-50 on whether or not the dread is coming after me or him. And especially with Hive Guard, there's a very good chance that some of the Sentinels are gonna go after the player that's still in spawn and dig to him. So I can mess around down there a little bit and then come back up. We already have 2 inventories, 1 resupply worth of Nitra, so we can drop that down right now, use that for Iron Will heals if one of us gets tagged trying to do any fast stuff. Like, it's just good. It's just good to have a resupply as soon as you can. Not based on dread health or anything. I'm not going to be the cringy redditor that tells you need 180 Nitra to fight a dread. Not true at all. You can fight 2 dreads on 1 inventory of ammo if you have a decent build. Just getting it out there helps a lot. Peace of mind and also speed and ease. Something about elimination missions, I don't know if I've talked about at great length, is there are ambient waves. So, like, where mining mission has swarms that come over time, elimination has just little clusters of enemies that spawn every so often. This counter, it continues, but it isn't able to spawn enemies while there is a dread alive. So what you're able to do in eliminations, what we're doing right now, is explore with a dread alive to save yourself from fighting ambient waves. So as soon as a dread dies, or as soon as there's no dread alive, let me be clear, we will get an ambient wave basically instantly. So it's just kind of delaying the inevitable, but we're able to explore the caves while being like, okay, we're not fighting extra enemies that we don't need to be fighting right now. Generally, the fastest way to deal with dreads is just to, you know, just blast them down together as soon as you spawn them. But if you want to explore the caves, if you need to explore the caves, this is a really good strategy to go about it. Because especially with only 2 players, has 5 dreads is like, unless you have an arbalist just chasing you around relentlessly, like, you can kind of just do what you want. It's kind of just free time where you can go around. Where's my little beanhole that I dug? I lost it. Going through your beanhole. Also, Hive Guard will tend to do this. He'll excavate a good amount of the map for you because you're going around so much. So if there's a lot of valuable things to find, the Hive Guard can usually tear open the cave and give you an easier path to them. That's why it's pretty good to leave the Sentinels alive while you're letting it dig, because it'll make the digging a lot faster. And also the Sentinels can kill each other, kind of like you saw there. Like, did you kill any Sentinels before that one?
No.
So the Sentinels were on top of each other digging, and they killed each other. So we killed the last one, and now we're dealing with the Hive. Not really a speed tech, that's more like a long efficiency tech more than anything, but if you're also being productive while that's happening, it's pretty good speed. So what we're gonna see here is pretty basic, like if you have a cryo driller or scout, we chunk. That's how you do it. We don't mess with anything, we don't wait around, we just freeze it, chunk it, get through the damage phase, and move back to this part. I don't even know what to call it, just waiting around for Sentinels to spawn. Kinda helpless in the grand scheme of things. There's a Sentinel lost digging somewhere. When this happens, you kind of want to hunt it down, though. Like, if you're in the room with the Dread, waiting on the Dread... Oh my god, let me up. Waiting on the Dread to become vulnerable, you want to launch somebody out to go hunt down Sentinels. Not give them time to mess around. I don't have cryo for this one, so... Even without cryo and 2-player, you can still chunk pretty easily. I messed that up. Could have probably got 2-cycle there, but... So, what you're gonna see here is while he's dealing with the tail end of this Dread fight, I'm actually gonna go pull the other one. This is, like I talked about before, to suppress the ambient spawns. Because right now, we're completely safe to do this. There's no way that Dread's gonna get here before this Dread dies. It's just, like, it's on the ropes already. Even if he died to it and the damage phase was going, I would have been able to get back. I would have been able to deal with it. No big deal at all. So now we got the second Dread out. The main thing we're worried about right now is finishing the secondary. Because we can do that while we're waiting for the pod, but generally it doesn't work out too well. So what we definitely want to do is juggle the aggro, try to get the Dread going up to spawn at the same time as there's 3 barley bulbs in here? Oh my god. While I'm running around and finishing secondary. There's pretty much no situation, especially with Dreads, where you don't want the scout to be the one going out and doing the secondary. It's just so much easier. Even with gunk seeds, just send them out with a mule. They'll figure it out. Like, so the speed and ease of the scout going out to clean up blooms or caps or holomite, anything like that, way easier than sending anyone else. So he's got no use for the mule up there, right? Did you mess up the damage phase?
No. Yeah. Don't do any holes.
You.
Oh. Oh, it's coming for you.
Yep. It's fine, I'm about to come back up. What are you doing up here?
Too many holes.
Alright, I'll help. Let me contribute to the game. So, something I do a horrible job of showing off is if you have Dread aggro on pretty much any of them while they're vulnerable, well, except for the twins, you should just be focused on moving them in the way that is most shootable for your teammates. So just running in circles around flat ground with no line of sight obstructions is what you should be aiming to do. So, I don't know how that didn't land.
Lag.
Sure. Alright, where's this last one? So another thing to be said about where you fight the Dreads is obviously the fastest place to fight them will always be right next to where they spawn. It might not be the safest or the cleanest arena to fight them in. Generally, if you can find a room like this, you're more than money to just take them on where they're at, not having to wait for them to dig like that Hive Guard did. We took advantage of the time, waiting for the Hive Guard to dig, but if we'd have just been sitting there, waiting for it to get to us, it would have been pretty gross time loss. Alright, cool. Thank you. Now we're just kind of farming clips on these Sentinels, waiting for it to end. Okay, there's not much Not much creativity left here. I think I get chain stunned by the turret, bozo. Oh, there you go. Okay. With this pod being far, this might be a good one for him to die and me just go. I can try to clip, host clip. Oh, what the? Oh no. Still, what the? Is this a machine event? It is a machine event. This is a good example of missing stuff because, you know, you just didn't check every corner. So, you know, one missed machine event. However, I am going to try to be a little cheeky with it. So, technically, this is a good opportunity for me to talk about machine events and how to clear them efficiently. Obviously, they're, you know, you can beat them, and that will end them. But an important thing about machine events when it comes to speed farming and XP is that even if you fail it, as long as the timer ends, you still get the XP from it. So if I was to leave this mission right now, we wouldn't get any XP for this Ebonite mutation. However, if I sit in this pod and wait for 2 minutes and 43 seconds, then we will get XP for it. So I'm gonna try to finish it, just for content. Quote unquote, we missed it the first time around, so yeah, you won't be able to infuse cores, and that's a bummer, but you still can get the XP as long as you're okay with taking that time loss and waiting the extra 3 minutes, just leaving someone in the doorway of the pod. I'm just gonna try to clear it here, just because I have rich atmosphere, and I think we'll be okay. If I don't, I'll just Iron Will into zone and not get the XP. Actually, no, there's red sugar here. I'll go until I get put into Iron Will, and we'll be fine. I might actually, I'll leave it uncompleted just to show that I'm not lying about that. Cool. So there you go. That would be a pretty easy win to this event. So, you know, nothing's impossible. If you needed to infuse cores and you were me, you could end it right there and punch a core in and get the redeem. But I'm gonna let it time. I'm gonna sit in the pod, let it time out, and just to show that it still gives XP. Cool. So timer ends. The box shows up below Apoca Blooms and the mission progress, and we go. So even with all that tomfoolery, we still got more than the golden ratio of 1k to 1 minute. Pretty good. And as you can see, we still got bonus XP for the Ebonite mutation, even though we didn't complete it. But yeah, that's pretty much all I got for right now. If you want to see just more intuitive, off-the-cuff speedrun missions, let me know. I know that wasn't necessarily the example of the best things going right, but then again, I think that just curating YouTube videos and only uploading, you know, footage where you win, footage where everything goes right, things like that, you know, and just only posting, like, the same thing over and over again. Like, if I was just to play 200 more kites in a row and be like, look, this is what Speedplay is, then, you know, I wouldn't really have a leg to stand on because I'm not really showing the full depth and breadth of what's going on, but hopefully at some point I'll be able to upload, you know, just off the cuff, consistently really good Speedplay stuff, just some good RNG to show the difference, because nothing really went incredibly right there. We had a lot of unfortunate situations, but made the best of it, and that's just a good show of how intuitive Speedplay works on the fly. So, hope you enjoyed. Just thought I'd wedge in a little bit of an update here at the end of the video, just to be completely transparent. As time's gone on, I'm just more and more disillusioned with DRG, and I find less and less content that I actually want to make and can put some heart into. From the updates that seem to be just making the game slower and more annoying to play, like Rockpox, content creators leading charges against people who write negative reviews and getting them sent death threats, a community manager that can't answer DMs, and with just no moving pieces in the game or anything new to look at for the foreseeable future, I just don't find a lot of stuff that I'm interested in talking about with DRG right now. And that's what leads me to the real paralyzing factor is DRG is the only game that I'm really interested in making long-term content about, because anything else would just be a one-off here, one-off there, nothing really of substance. I wouldn't have any knowledge base to talk about those games, and, you know, it would just be a passing trend. So it leaves me kind of in a weird spot where I don't want to make content about DRG. There's nothing to make content about in DRG, and I have that paralysis with making content about other games. So yeah, I mean, that's a really wishy-washy non-answer to a question that no one's even asking, which is, where are you at? But I just thought it'd be, you know, good to be transparent and say that I just really, I got nothing for you, really. Like, this video has piqued my interest a little bit. It's good to talk about the way that I enjoy playing the game and kind of helping to peel back some of the layers and hopefully help the people that are still playing the game understand a little bit better how to move into Speedplay a little bit more. I got a couple projects I'm working on right now that I'll publish once I wrap them up. But other than that, I don't really know what's coming. I wouldn't even say I'm burned out on DRG anymore, I just don't have anything that I want to do with the game. Maybe I'll make some videos on some other games. I have one other game-centric project I'm working on right now, but other than that, I don't know what I'm going to do. As always, thank you for watching, and have a nice day.